Okay, welcome to another iPad painting tutorial. On today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to paint a snowy pine tree. We're approaching Christmas, we're in the middle of winter now, and so it just feels appropriate. So as usual, I'm using the app Procreate. I've opened an A4 canvas. I've got some colours I'm going to use here. If you want to use these exact colours, then they are down in the description as hexadecimal codes. You just need to go onto Procreate, go into the value section, type in the codes that are in the description into this area here. The colour will appear up here. You can drag it down into your own created palette, and then you can use the exact same colours. An easier way of doing that perhaps is to follow the link in the description for my Patreon page, and the colour file is actually free for download there if you follow that link. In terms of the brushes I'm using, I'm going to be going to the textured brushes. I'm going to be using this one here, which I'm not too sure about the pronunciation, but it's MacLeod perhaps. And then the other brush that I'm going to be using is a fallback to my regular brush of the soft brush within airbrushing. So on your first layer, we're just going to really have to map out what the main shape of our tree is going to be. So we'll go to our black color, we'll go to our brushes, and we will go to our textured brushes, and we'll go to this brush. So either MacLeod or MacLeod, however you're supposed to pronounce it. Either way, we're using this brush. And on our canvas, we're going to do a zigzag motion. So we're going to start off, in fact, we'll turn the size of the brush to the lower end of 2%, and we'll have it on 100% opacity. And we're just going to start off with slight zigzags at the top, and then they will get wider and slightly more spaced out as they go. Now this is only really going to be a guide. I'm doing it quite neatly, quite deliberately and quite slowly, just so you can get a measure, just so you can see it produced. I mean, if you did it like that, it would almost serve the same purpose. It doesn't really matter. But I'm trying to preserve as neat a shape as I possibly can at the same time. Let's just reposition that slightly lower down, and then we've got a little bit more room at the top as well. Now I don't want to see that at the end, so let's turn the opacity down for now so I can still see it. It's going to be a useful guide, but it's not going to be dominant in our scene. So we'll turn it to around 25%. We can still, like I say, clearly see it, but we're going to create a layer above that now. Now we're going to go back. We're still going to use the black. We're still going to use the same brush. And on this layer, it's going to be 100% opacity, and we're still on the lower end of 2%. And we'll just start moving left and right. Now I'm keeping it quite loose. I'm keeping it like this. I'm doing a bigger version here, but you can see I'm being quite erratic with it. But because it's on a small scale, you're not noticing that too much. Not yet anyway. But I'm using the zigzag not as an absolute shape that I need to stick to, but it just prompts me that I need to keep moving left and right. And obviously we're going to have something that runs down the middle. It's going to be the trunk of the tree. So if I deviate slightly from the zigzag, that isn't really a problem, but it is just a reminder that you should be keeping that general motion of left and right. And don't forget, if there's the odd random gap, then you can fill it in with just some little shapes, maybe some smaller branches, perhaps that don't have many pine needles on them. Now if you deviate a little bit in terms of width from your overall shape, it doesn't really matter. It is only a guide. You want to keep the general shape looking believable. So whatever you set out in the first place is probably going to be useful, just as a reminder. But if it does vary a little bit, it's not so much of a problem. But you can see the general pattern that I'm creating now. So we'll try and readjust this so it goes down roughly down the center. In fact, let's draw that first. Doesn't matter if it leans slightly, it is obviously an organic thing. And then we'll remind us to swing back this way. So we're doing in between shapes as well. So we're sticking to the main zigzag, of course, but we can add extra noise and extra elements. Now, much of this is going to be covered by snow and other things anyway, but if we do get too many gaps, then you can just go into it and just create a little bit more noise too. More on this side and then more on this side. Now, as I was showing you at the top, the branches will curve slightly more upwards, but as we get further down, they're going to be dragged down by increasing amounts of snow. So the weight of the snow is going to start bringing the branches more pointing down generally, rather than slightly up, more at the top. Again, so we've got quite a big gap there, so we're going to do a main branch that comes down there, but on the in-between, we can still add some extra things there too. This is generally going to be for the overall effect, and that's something that I do tend to say quite a lot in the videos that's been pointed out to me, but it is true. With the luxury of extra time, then feel free to go into the details, but if I get you to the point where you've achieved the look generally, then hopefully that's been useful. So you can see I'm keeping it quite scribbly really. I'm using the zigzag as a general guide, and then as we get to the bottom, I may need to just even it up with 1 or 2 extra like that. And then once you've created those 1 or 2 extra, you can use that as a springboard to add more noise, more smaller branches off of that. Sometimes you use something as a guide, but you can't stick to it absolutely rigidly, otherwise it's not really going to serve you well in the long run. So it's a guide, but not something you should absolutely stick to 100%. So we could even turn the size of the brush up to maybe 3%. For the middle section, let's start to pack some of this in. Obviously we want the trunk as well. Back down to 2%. Fill in those gaps. Constantly moving. Don't let it become too stagnant, too stagnated. Something like this. Okay, so we can get rid of that little zigzag shape that was the first layer. So once we've got rid of that zigzag shape, what you might decide is that some of these areas are a little bit too translucent, so you could always duplicate the layer, which double saturates some of that dark colour. And that's going to be really useful because when I pinch those together and create another layer on top and go to this second colour, which is this green, again it's on a new layer that's on top, I can then work on top with this green in areas at the front of our tree, and it's going to contrast and be visible as extra highlights on our branches and just start to really help give it a 3D overall appearance. Now that's going to really be exaggerated when we start to use the snow on it as well, but we just want to bring some of these textures to the forefront. Again, if we've got any gaps, we can just start to fill some of those occasionally in with the green as well, but certainly we don't want all of it to be solid black. We want to go over it and just bring out some highlights as we go. We definitely want gaps. We don't want it completely solidly green either. And again, we're just moving down, keeping it really loose. Much of this is again going to be covered by snow, but it just gives us a nicer background to add the snow to. Okay, so that's already given it a bit more depth. We're going to go to our third colour. This time I'm going to go back to my brushes, and I think I'd rather use the airbrush for the snow, and I'm going to use the soft brush. I'm going to turn the size of the brush to 2%, and I'm going to put the opacity at around 50% and see how that looks. Now this blue is going to be a lot brighter, but it is still the snow in shadow. Now I've got 2 different types of colours here, so I've got the white and I've got this blue. Now it's both going to be the snow, but the snow in shadow is going to look more of this blue colour. Now I don't want to put this on the underneath of these branch sections, so it's going to be resting on top of sections of these branches, but it should have a dark shadow underneath it. So if you put it on top, that's fine, but underneath it you should have the green and the black showing. I might even turn the opacity up a little bit actually, so I'll put it at more like 60% and we'll carry on. So I'm just using more taps, having it lots of little broken marks on the tree. So I'm not using large sweeping motions like that anymore. I'm letting go and tapping the surface, as you can probably hear. And again, I'm just trying to move backwards and forwards, left and right, but this time concentrating on the top half of each of our structures now. Obviously in the middle, you're going to get some as well. When you start getting further down, you might get some areas where there's large clumped areas, so you can really start to just merge areas together. And then when you get smaller branches, obviously you just get smaller amounts of that snow. This can be quite useful for covering anything that you're not quite happy with in your initial structure anyway. Like I said, much of this was always destined to be covered with snow. So if you don't like what you've got for your background and there's a little bit that just looks scruffy and untidy, this is just going to get covered by snow anyway. And you're only going to have little bits of the branches poking through. Okay, so like I say, any bigger areas like this, especially in the forefront, in the middle, you can really merge together, have some big sections of snow that all clump together, that merge, and that will look even more realistic anyway. Okay, let's go to our brightest colour, which is this white. Perhaps what we should do with our background is just change it slightly. So I'm just going to move it along our wheel just a little bit, not too much, just so it greys out slightly. And then when we do contrast with the white, you can see it's going to be more pronounced compared to the background. Now I'm going to make a decision that the sun or the light is coming from this side, so I'm going to add more of our highlights onto this part of the tree. So I will just create another layer for that. I'm going to keep it at the 2% on the size and the 60% opacity or thereabouts. And now I'm just going to, again, with perhaps even a little bit more care this time, just add some brighter highlights. Now, I think it would be as well to just keep some slightly more broken texture for this, so some occasional blobs on their own will look really good as well, but just generally keep it a little bit more fractured, more broken, because not every bit of the blue area is going to pick up the same degree of highlight. So you're almost getting more broken on top of the blue area. So every bit of snow that's on there is going to appear blue, all of it, unless it's highlighted. So you can imagine the highlight is only going to pick up on certain bits, so it's going to be more fractured, more fragmented. Now I'm going to creep it round to around the centre mark. So if we've got what I imagine is like a rounded blob shape here, perhaps I can do a highlight on one area of it and just a hint of it there, and then more of it over on this side more dramatically. And I'm going to take that idea and extend it more on this side than I am on that side. And clearly again, the sunlight is going to pick the top of our snow and less so on the underneath. So the underneath of that is going to have the bluey colour, and then the top bit is going to have the white. You could always sharpen your brush a little bit just by turning it down to 1%, and let's go for an even brighter contrast. So we'll go for 70%. That way we can really get precise, control exactly where we want the highlights to be, really sharpen that top edge. Break up some of those branch structures if they look a little bit scruffy, a little bit untidy. Okay, when I've got to this stage, I feel like the bottom of the tree actually needs to be removed. I think it would look better if it was pretty much flush with the snow and the ground, and I think that would suit it a little bit better. So we'll just get rid of all those little strange anomalies. We'll create another layer for this and we'll put it at the bottom of everything. We'll go to our colours, we'll use the shadowed colour and we'll use the bright colour. We'll go with the shadowed colour first. We'll go to our brushes, use the soft brush within airbrushing, we'll put it at 2% and we'll keep it quite low to around 20%. And I'm just going to further create a sense perhaps that the snow comes to meet the tree. And obviously we're going to have a shadow of the tree on this side as well. And then we can alternate to the white and we can add some highlights onto the snow on this side. Something like this. Now if we wanted to add some extra little features, things that stick up, then we could do, we'll just go back in with our dark colour, whoops, and we just add some extra things that are perhaps just branching out from the snow. Just to ground it, give it some context, I think it always helps. Okay, I hope that's been useful in understanding how you create the general effect. Now if you're creating a Christmas card or you want to create a winter painting, then you'll be able to integrate snow-covered pine trees, hopefully a bit better than you could before. Make sure to subscribe, press the bell notification button, hit the like button for this video if you really want to help the channel out, and I shall catch you back here soon. See you later.